Welcome to our workshop today on how to talk to the judges. We're going to be very informal, so feel free to ask questions. If you have any of your own experiences, you can share those too. But like I said, it's pretty open. It's going to be like you're talking to judges because all of us have judged before, so you're already sort of doing what the workshop intends to teach. My name is Gridley. I do a lot of everything with FIRST. I'm the First Legally Global Judge Advisor. I've judged for 10 years up in Cleveland at the Buckeye Regional, and I'm the Queen City Regional Judge Advisor. So I'm also an FTC coach, so you may see me anywhere and everywhere. I'd like to introduce Ted Hood. He's the Ohio Senior Mentor for FIRST, so you'll see him everywhere too. And on the end here we have Jennifer Nichols. She's been a FRC mentor for over 10 years and an FRC judge for 5. And so she has a lot of experience on the team side as well as on the judging side. So what I'm going to start out with is just kind of the process. How many people have talked to judges before or are familiar with the process? Sort of half of a hand, so 2.5 hands. Okay. An FRC regional is typically 2 days. It's Friday and Saturday. Friday morning, while you guys are getting your robot ready, we're back in the judging room, splitting up into 2 different sets of judges. We have team judges and we have machine judges. So what that means is we have a pair of judges for each type of award. And what we do is, after we have our initial meeting, we go out and start talking to teams. And usually we get in a couple teams before opening ceremonies, then we all go to opening ceremonies, and then we come back after watching a couple matches. And then the judges will go around in those pairs and come to see every team. And we usually have some sort of like dot or sticker or something to keep track of which teams we've seen. That's important to know because if you don't get seen by both team and machine judges, you should let pit admin know that you haven't been seen, because it could have just been the team members weren't in the pit area or some other reason. Which kind of brings me to my most kind of important tip is to have someone in the pits for sure Friday morning until at least noon. As a team spokesperson, whatever, someone who can talk about both the robot and the team. That's probably the single most important tip we can give you, is to be there. Because if we can't interview you to start out with, then that doesn't give us any information to suggest that your team should win a trophy or an award of some sort. Now, obviously, awards are not the whole reason we do judging. We want you guys to get experience talking to engineers and describing your robot, describing what your teams have done, just get that confidence in speaking. It's a very low threat environment. Most of us, 98% of us, are pretty nice people, hopefully. We try to mix in humor. We're not always successful, but so in addition to trying to find those teams that are worthy of awards, we want to also just give you an opportunity to talk. And that Friday morning is kind of the key period of time, because like I said, you'll be visited by both machine and team judges, and you'll kind of be able to tell which one's which by the questions they ask. Both sets will typically kind of ask you some basic facts about your team, but the machine judges will ask you details about your robot. The team judges will be asking about fundraising, recruitment, business plans, that kind of information. Machine judges will usually be a little more serious, just because they're, engineers. The team judges will typically be a little more interactive, and because they want to hear about, all the stuff you do as a team, more so than the robot. From that initial interview on Friday morning, we then go back and kind of caucus during lunch and talk about which different teams we've seen that we feel are good candidates for awards. So we'll be like, oh, did you see 104's shooter? I've never seen anything like that. And then we'll kind of put on make up lists for mostly the Friday awards, but then also the Saturday awards too. And I'll talk a little bit about what those are here in a minute. But we want to come up with kind of a shorter list for each of the awards. And then on Friday afternoon, we'll go back out in kind of different sets of judges and talk to those teams that we felt should be in consideration for a particular award. So on Friday afternoon, we might come back and ask you a lot of questions about your shooter. What kind of hydraulics do you use, etc. How did you come up with the design? Do you have a layout in CAD somewhere? Those kind of questions. And the key for really all of answering questions is having a lot of detail when possible. So if we ask you, let's say we ask you about the accuracy of your shooter, you say, well, that's pretty good. What we'd rather hear is, well, we can get 80% at the high goal and 70% at the low goal from anywhere within 20 feet. So that's sort of the things we expect that your team is doing when you're testing your robot before you get to competition. So you've kind of gathered that more data than kind of general information. We'll want to hear about design process. Who came up with the ideas? Can they describe them? And when we get into some of the awards and talking about specifics, some of the awards are based, one of the main criteria is, can the student representative describe the feature? And so, especially for the Friday awards, which have to do more with sort of creativity and innovation, we'll want to know how you came up with that idea. Did you dream it up after, playing Halo for 12 hours and drinking Red Bull? Or did you, did your mentor design it or whatever? Which actually brings me to another point. We're going to want to talk to kids. We're not going to want to talk to mentors. We'll talk to them a little bit, but we don't want the mentors to describe robot features or talk a lot to us. So if you can teach your coaches and your mentors to step back when we come, say, let us talk, that would be a big help for us. So then Saturday is typically similar. We may have a little bit more of the team interviews in the morning, although we'll really start to hone in on the Saturday awards too during the morning period, because we want to watch the matches too. We're excited to see the elimination rounds at the end, and so we try to get our work done quicker. But it's very, very, very helpful to us if you can be there during both mornings, really, and then have someone there who can describe team and machine features. One small difference, I don't know how many of you go to Cleveland or going to Buckeye, but it's slightly different in the way we do those initial interviews in Cleveland. You may only get visited once. We may have team and machine people together, and oftentimes when we do that, the machine person will start talking about machine stuff to kid's more, versed in to talk about the machine, and then the other judge may talk to you about, facts about recruiting, how many kids have gone on to what colleges, etc. So I'm going to turn it over to these two to talk a little bit more about any sort of hints they may have about that process, and then after that we'll kind of talk about some of the awards.
One thing that I would add on to what Skip said is that even though we do come to the pits and talk to you, we also go around the event and watch what you guys are doing. If we're looking at, say, Gracious Professionalism Award, we are going to watch how you're interacting with the other teams, what you guys are doing at the event. The Machine Awards, if they like this last year, liked a particular shooter, they're going to go watch that thing actually work, because it might be a great design, but it might not actually be effective. So they want to see what the actual end result is on your robot.
Well, and typically, just to build on that, we'll have at least one or two what we call field observers sitting at the the control table, watching and recording what every robot does in every match. We're looking for we'll look for failures. We'll look for particularly effective shooters or whatever the game objective is. And so that just sort of, anytime you see a blue shirt, we're probably taking notes or observing something that we want to see. And Ted mentioned Gracious Professionalism. We're going to ask you for inputs on other teams.
Right.
Is there any teams that have helped you with parts, practice setup, etc., or have you helped any other teams? And so have that kind of information. A lot of times we'll get, we helped that team over there somewhere, and again, that's where those details come into play. It's a lot easier for us if you could say, these 4 teams asked us for parts. This other team helps, loans their practice field to us during the season. Those kind of things. We mentor 15 FLL teams versus, I think we started some a couple years ago. You can kind of see where, in our minds, that really helps us differentiate, because it's really, we always say it's a tough decision to make on a lot of the awards, but it really is, and that's where those details really help. And we have Team A that started 15 teams and mentors 8 of them, versus Team B that we think we have some FL teams somewhere. So we're gonna kind of give more weight to that team that has the details.
I'm typically a team attribute judge, and the teams to me that most impress me are the teams that pull us judges in, rather than, a lot of times as judges, we're walking around, we're trying to find a team that's not busy working on the robot where we can talk to somebody, because we want to talk to you and we want to hear about your team. And the teams that actually have somebody in their pit, their job is to talk to the judges, it's very effective to have somebody like that. That's if your team is large enough to even afford to have an extra person to be able to do that. But it's a good way to impress the judges. And another thing that helps as far as talking to the judges is maybe have a poster in your pit that maybe has bullet points of different things that you have done throughout the year that help guide the questions of the judges. Because the judges are going to be asking you questions. They may see a picture of somebody in your team working at an FLL event, and then that will spark another question. So, how many teams does or FLL teams do you guys help? And it can help spark a lot of questions that you may not think of to even say during the interview, but it's just a good way to help. Another thing is maybe like a little flyer that you guys can hand out that has a picture of your team with your shirts. And the reason for that is it gives the judges that connection. Oh, that was that team in the red shirt that we talked to and they did whatever. Because there's so many teams that we see that sometimes it's hard to remember who did what. So it's just little things like that that help. And just remember, the judges, they just want you to succeed. They want to like give you questions that is going to make you answer them the way that the answers that we need to hear to give you the score that we want to give you. So.
The other thing is when we come to your pits, we're going to ask very broad, open-ended questions. We're not trying to target any particular area. We're going to, say something like, if we were a team attribute judge, you'd say something like, "Tell me a little bit about your team." That's a very, very open question. Same thing about the robot. Tell me about your robot. And whatever you are answering is where we start directing our questions, because that's what you want to tell us about. The last thing that you do not want to do is, if we ask about your team, start directing towards things on your robot, or vice versa. If somebody asks about your robot, don't start talking about the team. We only have a few minutes with each team, and we have to see a lot of teams. So getting off track on something else makes it really difficult for us to narrow in on an award that you guys might deserve.
Yeah, something Jen said reminded me when it's always helpful to have kind of one person who knows enough about the robot to answer basic questions or direct it to other people who can answer them in more detail, and then maybe another team spokesperson who can do team stuff. And then you have like little fact sheets. And we realized that you're not going to remember, what the graduation rate was 3 years ago for engineering inspiration type award. But you can have that if your team keeps that kind of data. You can have that in a binder to reference. And then again, the spokesperson for the robot doesn't have to know, what kind of encoder to use, as long as they can direct it to someone who does know the answer. The other thing, Ted mentioned the general questions. When we get to the awards, we'll answer a lot more specific questions. And, what you don't want to do is sugarcoat it and say, it works pretty much all the time, because we're going to go out and see it on the field. And, there's an old saying, you learn more from failure than you do from success. And so we're going to want to hear about those failures, like, our shooter's jamming, or our drivetrain isn't working right, or having communication problems, or, whatever the issue is. We're going to want to learn that, hear that information, and hear how you're responding to it and how you've overcome some of those issues and problems that you had during the season to get to where you are at the event. And so, feel free to tell us, we're just having an awful day. We can't get this to work, we can't get that to work. We think it's this. We're going to go back out in the practice field in a few minutes and test this. That really, that's really impressive for us as judges to see when a team's struggling, to hear that information and hear about sort of the process on how you can overcome some of those things.
Well, and the judges only know what you tell them. I mean, we're not mind readers. If your team does a lot of community service, we only know if you tell us. So don't be afraid to tell us, and don't be afraid to feel like you're bragging, because you're supposed to be almost like a cheerleader for your team. Tell us all the good things that you do.
Well, and in a way, it's first the I in first is for inspiration. So we want you, part of it's inspiring you kids to take up, STEM careers, but part of it is you inspiring us back by telling us all the outstanding work you do. And we hear so much good stuff. Keep telling us. We want to hear all of it.
That's why we keep doing it.
Before I get into kind of the individual awards and some of the criteria, is there any questions or comments or?
So you walk through and you see like 50 teams pits, right? Usually, what's like the one thing that makes you remember a team? Is there anything that you can't remember something about all those teams from this casual encounter?
It's those teams that pull you in, and not just you have to keep walking by till you kind of see somebody get eye contact where you can interrupt and say, "Do you have time to talk to us?"
It's definitely the enthusiasm, you know,
Yeah.
like that. You know, if we come up and we're standing there and you look to see at us, oh, that's a blue shirt, and
Yeah.
like hide and stuff. You know, we'll ask you. You know, we'll spend some time with you for sure, because we do want to see every team, but then we also want to be like, you know, we'll come back at lunchtime going, I couldn't even get out of the RoboCats pit. They kept talking to me for half an hour. That's a good thing. That's what we want to see. So, question.
So you like it when students can approach you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Absolutely.
If
Sure.
we're in the morning on Friday, we're walking around in a certain area of the pit, we're looking at those teams in that
Yep.
area. And sometimes it's difficult because you walk by a pit, you don't want to interrupt them when you know that there's 3 people in there and we're all got their hands in the robot. You don't want to stop them because you know that they're trying to get ready for a match. But if they're all kind of just hanging out, you walk up and you start talking and they kind of just look at you like, what am I supposed to do? That's hard to talk to kids, especially when you can't get answers out of them. But if I walk up to a team and somebody just steps out and they're ready to talk, I'm going to stop and start talking to them.
Makes our job easier.
Yeah.
So if you're walking past us, you'd be like, hey,
Feel free. Yep. We love those teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And they're
just,
usually the teams that stand out.
you know,
they're prepared.
just say, you have any questions for us? Can we help you answer any? You know, can we tell us
Yeah.
about your team or our team? And you know, it's very simple. You don't have to like, you know, physically accost us or anything. But,
Yeah.
And speakers, can you repeat the questions? Because otherwise they
Oh,
probably won't be recorded.
sure. I don't remember what the question.
is it okay if you're walking past people?
Oh, yeah. The question was, you know, is it okay for teams to kind of come out and approach us versus us going up to them? And yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's encouraged. You know, we probably do ask that we be in like your area and not like halfway across the pits. Because like Ted said, we typically judges will see 10 to 12 teams on Friday morning, and we have about an hour and a half to do it, so it's not a lot of time. We have, I'd say, roughly 15 minutes. You got 15 minutes to blow our minds on that Friday morning. So anything you can do to do that is outstanding.
Well, and then when we come back to see you on Saturday, if we're asking specific questions about something, it should be kind of obvious what award you're probably up for, and just make sure you're prepared to answer the questions and make your team stand out.
Yeah, we obviously can't say that you're going to win that award or something like that, because it's up. There's a lot of factors, but I mean, you're smart. You know, if we're asking you about, you know, things like welds and your pits and how clean the wiring is, that maybe you're in, you know, competition for the quality award. So, you know, at that point, you should really play up the features, and that actually is a good lead into talking about the individual awards and some of the criteria. I'm actually not sure if what I have is posted on the website or not, but it's information that you guys should know. It's the criteria for which we choose the awards, and oftentimes it'll come down to, you know, one specific thing that differentiates Team A from Team B. So on Friday, the awards are Volunteer of the Year, which you don't have to worry about, Team Spirit, Imagery, Innovation and Control, Creativity, Engineering Excellence, Entrepreneurship, Rookie Inspiration, and Woody Flowers, which you have to worry about a little bit because you have to nominate your coaches and mentors for that. So the Friday Machine Awards are typically a little more about risk-taking, innovation, those kind of topics. And the Saturday ones are more about, quality, engineering, design processes, those kind of criteria. So Saturday, it's Quality Award, Gracious Professionalism, Industrial Design, Judges Award, which is a wild card that we can give to any team. Safety. Now, we're not going to talk about safety, but there will be separate safety judges that will talk to you. Rookie All-Star, Engineering Inspiration, Dean's List, and Chairman's. I'll talk a little bit about Dean's List and Chairman's at the end because there's some new rules for it for this year. But like Industrial Design Award, the guideline, this award celebrates form and function in an efficiently designed machine that effectively addresses the game challenges. So, elegant and efficient, practical, a systems design approach, contributes to success in FIRST robotics, not just on the field of competition. So that's where you want to bring in any sort of use or things you've learned outside of that specific competition. Reliability and maintainability, and the whole machine design and process is worthy, not just a component. And the other similar award is the Quality Award, Robustness in Concept and Fabrication. So we're looking at workmanship, welds, joints, wiring, pit area, tools, your cart, your control panel, all that. Again, it can withstand the rigors of competition. Workmanship is valued and planned in. Again, contributes to your overall success in FIRST. The machine was built with a detailed plan in mind. Industrial design and quality are very similar. The industrial design one, I think, focuses a little bit more on obviously the design part, systems design. Quality is really, like I mentioned, we're going to look at welds, we're going to look at wiring, we're going to look at your pit, to make sure that's not a mess. Both of those awards, we want to see 0 or less than 0 failures in competition. And by failure, I mean it just doesn't work. Not you got flipped over because there was some pushing deal and some fluke accident. We're looking for actual, failures. The next 3 awards are based on creativity. That's the Engineering Excellence, Innovation and Control, and Creativity Award. All three of these, the single most component that's important is your spokesperson can describe what's either innovative or creative about your robot. So, what we don't want to see is, it's that wheel there. That's innovative. Well, why? Well, because no one else has it. We want to hear, well, we designed that in because the CG, the robot, was such that we wanted that there to help balance something, or the person should do a better job than I'm doing now of describing that feature. And I've seen it come down to that criteria alone end up being the difference between, again, A and B winning an award. All 3 of those awards should be a result of something that is effective in the game. We don't want to see something just for creativity's sake. If any of you are familiar with the Rube Goldberg contest, where creativity is like taken to the extreme there, we're not that. We want something that contributes to the game challenge. Creativity, like one of the criteria is because it's so creative and innovative, you're taking risks. Failure is a little more acceptable in that case. because we want you to take risks. Creativity is we want you to sort of do it on purpose. We don't want you to discover something creative halfway through the season I've seen that happen too. It's like, well, we put that on there for this, and then we just found out last week that if we flip it around, it does whatever. And we want thoughtful creativity, not sort of the accidental good luck. They should be like engineering type solutions for a specific problem. Obviously, the Innovation Control Award is really going to be about controls, and that could be either the actual controls of like your autonomous mode. It could be your driver station. It could be some unique algorithm you developed for practice, or again, those three sort of creativity and innovation type awards are really broad. So we're going to rely a lot more on you to tell us sort of those creative and innovative things versus us. We can look at welds, we can look at your pit, we can see good engineering design. We may not understand what is creative about a particular component.
All right, the Team Spirit Award and the Imagery Award and the Gracious Professionalism Award are the team attribute ones. The Team Spirit Award is basically the team where their spirit is consistent throughout the team and throughout their attitude, originality, and depth. So, when you walk around and you see the team that's just everywhere, they're all excited. They're in the stands cheering. They're doing everything they can to root not only their team but the other teams on. That's the team that's going to stand out for the Team Spirit Award.
One thing I will add on to Team Spirit, it's sort of natural to think, okay, who's the loudest, who's dancing the most,
Right.
And those all do contribute, but a lot of times, a very lot of times, and I'm being honest here, a lot of those teams are in consideration for things like engineering inspiration or other awards, and so we may hesitate to give them the Team Spirit Award because, as you know, a team should only win one trophy at an event, and things like engineering inspiration are a little more weighty in terms of what your team's accomplished. And so we want to award all the awards to the teams sort of most deserving with that one per team in mind. And so we may hold off on if your team has 150 people there singing for 2 days and you're not the Team Spirit winner, you may take some comfort in that you're probably in consideration for something else. What we also want to see from Team Spirit is not just loud, but you have an identity, you're a cohesive team, all your gracious professionals, all the usual first kind of stuff we're looking for. Sorry.
It also says that one of the criteria is not only just what you do at the competition, but it's apparent in everything that you do, including your school, community, with your sponsors and other teams. So that's something that you can talk about in your pit. How much do you get your community involved in your team? The Imagery Award, appearance of machine and team are integrated and interactive. The robot actually being part of your team is a huge part of this one. Visuals and integrated team machine are exceptional. The team is supportive of the principles of FIRST, and the team's theme is original. Can be explained by the team spokesman and is fitting for the objectives, character, and history of the team. So basically coming up with something that is unique to your team. This is something that could also help us distinguish one team from another. For example, the Decabots back there with their tutus on. You know, I remember that even now. I saw that from a distance. I could tell you what team number and what team name they are just by that. You know, the 3010, the Red Plague, they got scrubs on. I can remember that. So that's easy for us to remember, and it also qualifies for an award. Yes. Okay. The Gracious Professionalism Award. This one's pretty easy to explain. Basically, it's about basically being fierce competitors and being gracious at the same time. The guidelines that it tells us here is other teams or organizations recommend them as showing good sportsmanship. For this one, when we go back out, we may not go to those direct teams that we are considering for gracious professionalism. We're going to just randomly walk around the pits and say, stop a team right in the aisleway or on the practice field and say, hey, you guys seen any good examples of gracious professionalism? And that's where we kind of hone in and find when we hear a team over and over and over again from every team, that's what kind of clues us in on where we need to go next. The team consistently demonstrates good sportsmanship on and off the field. They exemplify principles of first in relationships with other teams. The team has a great attitude, and the team has been identified on and off the field for being good sports. So any questions about those 3 awards?
Real quick on the rookie awards, are any rookie teams here? Okay, but we probably don't need to talk about them. We'll film a separate segment for those for the future. But I mean, the rookie all-star is essentially like a rookie chairman's, if you want to call it that. Rookies aren't eligible for chairman's, because chairman's is based on sustained excellence. But like you can think of this as a chairman's in the making. Rookie inspiration is like a engineering inspiration in the making. Again, an EI is usually more long term, and so rookies don't have that resume built up yet. And I'm going to turn it over to Jen now to talk a little bit about engineering inspiration and entrepreneurship.
For engineering inspiration, it says, this award celebrates a team's outstanding efforts in advancing respect and appreciation for engineering and engineers, both within the schools as well as their community.
Some of the things you want to talk about for EI are, in addition to all the good stuff you've done in competitions, if you've done any community service, if you've had, STEM night at your library, or if you've done, some teams will do like a pumpkin chucking contest, or, sort of it has an engineering flair to it. There's a wide, you can be as creative as you want to with ways of getting STEM into your community. Some good teams to kind of emulate, 379 is one. 1629 out of Maryland is one that, I've always found to be, really creative in the things they come up with. CIA, which is a 291, I don't remember the number, but they're from Pennsylvania. They do a lot of different things, like they host a play, like a murder mystery play, but they also tell the attendees about their, about what they're doing, what FIRST is, etc. So, that's where you want to be. Almost don't even talk about the robot, except how it lets the community know what you guys are doing.
Well, and we want to know the history of the team, but most important is what your recent history is, like what you have done within the last year. Because a lot of teams, you know, if they've been around 10 years, they've done a lot of community service, but something they did 5 years ago doesn't quite mean as much as what they did this year. So, and as far as entrepreneurship award, you need to have a business plan, which a lot of teams don't even have a business plan.
If you don't have a business plan, you're not eligible.
Yeah.
We will not even consider it. You know, last year, and I imagine they'll probably still do it this year, the business plans had to be uploaded to a website to even be considered. You know, so that's pretty straightforward. If we don't have that business plan, then question back.
So you said that you can come to us and you'll hint us kind of award that we're running for. Can we hint you kind of award we're aiming for? Like we want to show you our business
Yeah.
plan.
So the question is, you know, can a team maybe focus on a specific award that they're really, you know, that may be a goal for them this season to win? You know, certainly you can do that. You can, you know, there's so many different ways to win a trophy or get recognized, and we realize it's hard to concentrate on everything, and we don't expect necessarily every team to have all, you know, all the pieces, and so it's absolutely okay to do that. Entrepreneurship, though, I still think you'll have to upload that business plan. I don't know if that's still going to be a requirement, but even if you give it to us at the event, we can accept it. We'll look at it and read it, but it won't qualify you unless the plan's also uploaded. One caution on just one thing you said about us hinting at what awards you might win. I really want to say it's more about just strengths that we've seen from your team, and that'll be obvious in the questions we ask. Like I said, you're smart. You're going to know if we're asking about your fundraising and your recruiting and what have you done in the community, that maybe you're an engineering inspiration candidate.
Just one question or comment. One thing I found kind of challenging about some of the first awards you can win is that they all are different. Some you have to write essays, some you have to apply for, some there's an interview, some it's just up to the judges to award, right? I mean, so, I don't know, do you folks have any comments about that? I know you're probably not prepared to review the whole award criteria, but.
Yeah, and actually that brings me sort of to the last two to three awards, and that's the Woody Flowers, Dean's List, and Chairman's. Woody Flowers, you know, it's an essay from a team member, again, about a coach or a mentor, and it's an upload to a website. You know, I encourage you to do that for all of your mentors. You know how much time and energy they put in. Even if they're like, oh, don't do it, you know, whatever, because they're not looking for accolades, but you know, it sure is nice if we have like 15 different mentors to choose from instead of 2 or 3. For Dean's List, that's an essay submission, and I don't know how much all you know. I think it's been posted on the blog. This year there's also a interview component. So the 2 Dean's List candidates from your team will be interviewed by a set of judges at you know, whatever regional you submit their essays for. You know, one on probably 2 or 3 judges. We'll have you come in for probably 5 minutes and just, you know, talk more about what we've read in your essays, or essays that people have written about you, I should say. So that's a change from this year. The other change is they're suggesting sophomores and juniors only for that award, because they want it to go on things like scholarship applications and other, important high school milestones. They will allow seniors this year. I know next year the plan is not to do that. So, if you're looking at very specific seniors that you want to put up this year, now's your chance. And then, sort of the granddaddy of all is the Chairman's Award. There's a whole nother presentation after I'm done for a whole hour on Chairman's Award. That requires a video submittal. And some important things to know about that is to have the video submittal and have the signed release form. We cannot accept those without a release form. All that is saying that you're using copyright-free music or whatever, any kind of images you may have added to it are not subject to copyright. We need the video, we need that, we need you to sign up. Friday morning, there'll be usually a sign-up sheet for a time. We need you to be on time for that time. And we need you to have all your materials. There's three people allowed to sort of present your case. And I don't want to get in, too much because obviously we have the whole presentation for that. But just from a sort of a logistics standpoint, those are the most important things we need. There's a list of rules. Got to follow the rules. We're nice. We try to give the benefit of the doubt, but that's also sort of a good opportunity for us to, throw you into some real-world deadlines and that kind of thing. The other thing to know about chairmans is a change for this year. I think this was on the blog too. You can submit for as many regionals as you want. So if you're going to 2 regionals, you can do chairmans at both. If you win at the first one, you're not going to be interviewing at the second one. So it's as many as you want until you win. That's sort of the main change for this year. Got a few minutes here to.
You said not interviewed in the second one. You have a different set of judges. You mean that if you apply for chairman for both events, that you're not going to go in front of the judges on one?
No, because if you win at the first event,
Oh, I didn't hear who win.
yeah, you have to win at the. Yeah, it's as soon as you win,
Right.
we shouldn't interview anymore, basically.
You guys said like the votes for teams. What do you think that you dislike most or think gets on your nerves?
So the question is kind of, we've gone over a lot of things we like to see. What are some things that we'd rather not see? We don't want to see mentors working on the robot a lot or talking about the robot a lot. That goes varying degrees. There are some judges who are very sort of big sticklers on, they're talking to 3 or 4 kids and there's 5 mentors working on the robot. Obviously FRC is different than FTC and FRC in that, FLL, in that there's a lot more mentor involvement, but we don't want to see only mentor involvement. I'd say that's one of the bigger ones. Gracious professionalism, we don't want to hear bad mouth in other teams. We don't want to hear about bad mouth in your own team.
In the pit and outside
Right.
of the pit. Because if we see somebody on a certain team and they're yelling at somebody outside of the pit, but it's still there, it just doesn't look good.
Sort of an honest, again, I'll be honest. Like, we don't want your spokesperson to be, prima donna type. We don't want them to kind of be in it for them. I haven't seen that a lot, but I have seen it. They're more concerned about their personal achievement than the team's achievement.
Sometimes it's also hard when you walk into a pit and ask a question, and you're bombarded by 5 people all trying to answer the question, and you're cutting each other off, and it's difficult to kind of get what the true story is. So if you can limit it to one person talking at a time, that's very helpful for us. It doesn't bother us if there are multiple spokesmen. It's just when they try to talk to you about the same thing at the same time, that's when it gets difficult.
And really to sort of leverage on one of the things we like to see, which is people there.
Yeah.
We really don't like to see no people there. An empty pit. Realize smaller teams, they may be out in a match, and we'll try to come back. But if they're not there for the whole, from 8 to 12, then we'll just assume that they probably aren't looking or thinking they might win an award.
I think there was a team last year that they were never there.
Yeah, we could find them.
We couldn't get them the whole time, so we couldn't judge them if they're not there.
We're pretty good, but the team's got to be there for us to judge them. Any more questions? You have another one? Ask away. We got plenty of time.
But isn't there very, judges vary on what they do and don't like for each of them? There's something all-around thing that most, not all judges don't like. So that's one thing that everybody doesn't want to see.
So the question is there like big no-nos, I guess, for that all judges would be turned off by? It's going to be stuff. It's going to be like gracious professionalism related issues.
Negative attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a big one.
like a kid yelling at another kid, like, "Give me that now!"
You might want to
Just
keep the word whatever,
Yeah.
save that for when we're not there. That's a good tip. But in general, I've like I said, I've judged 10 years, and I've never had teams that I've been just stunned at how bad they are, or how they aren't first. It's far more the other opposite. Like, oh my God, I can't believe all the things I'm seeing. And especially when you'll see experienced judges, and then the rookie judges, you can tell because they're just floating and smiling, and everything's the greatest thing they've ever seen. And that's a great opportunity for you to hit up an easy target, I guess. Question.
This is just out of curiosity. I'm going to do the topic well. Has anybody else gone through this before?
Vibrating? Yes.
yes, it does.
It's an old mall. It does make
Question: was anyone notice the floor vibrating? And and if so, can you explain it? Pretty sure
This is our mall, and I cannot explain it.
there's some
Yeah.
physics or something involved. I'm pretty sure.
Do we have any other questions for the judges? Can we give them a good round of applause?
We have one late one.
That's okay.
Is there, because I remember one of the judges talking about where we just want to keep talking about community involvement. Is there a point where we just don't want to talk, we just don't want to brag too much about ourselves?
No,
No.
brag away.
The more information we
away.
have, the more fighting power we have to
Yep.
go back. Because what's going to happen is we all go back to the rooms and we talk amongst judges, and that's how we make the decision. So the more firepower you give us, the more firepower we have in that room. to
Because
fight
then
for
we
your
will
team.
be your advocates,
Right.
fighting for you. You want us to fall in love with your team.
I'm not saying every judge does this, but I will frequently talk to a team until they can't answer any question that I give them.
Right.
I'll ask them, I'll start asking them equations and stuff. Well, maybe not quite that detailed, but I want to find out, okay, you did FLL. How many teams did you mentor? How many students mentored them? How many hours per week? What did they help them with? If you can sort of out answer me with a number of questions I ask you, then that's all bonus points.
This is a off-topic question right now. Is this mall always in construction or?
Another mall question.
Yeah, it's 25
It's a
years
complicated story. It's an old mall. It looks pretty nice.
It's a ghost
I
mall.
thought, but Ohio has a lot of ghosts, and I'm not saying there's any in this mall, but there just might be. That's all I know.
Well, thank you very much. So we have a brief survey that we appreciate it if you would fill it out. It's very short. It's like 7 questions or so. If you don't have a pencil, then we have some. And if you do fill one out, we have a box to submit here when we're done. Judges, do you have any other comments or thoughts?
We'll see you in about 6 months, not about ish. Good luck. Thank you.
One more round of applause for our judges.